Was the first metal spinning demo that I did here for this group, and I got such an amazing response through emails and comments on that video, and still some things will pop up and everything, that it was like I was writing these ginormous emails to different wood turners around the world that follow the club's videos. And I was like, I can't keep writing these emails. This is insane. So I just started making like short little videos to just fill in the gaps, and I've continued that on with my own students at University of North Texas and things like that. But it really, like, it all happened like right here. So I don't want to just sort of repeat that demo. So we had sort of brainstormed about things, and just given the holiday season coming and things like that, thought it would be a fun opportunity to get into maybe like a little like spun metal ornament or something. So this is kind of the component that I'll be making tonight. It's just a little pewter bell form that then you could sort of like drill and attach things to if you wanted it to be a little like tree ornament or something like that, if you want to pass that around. So just curious, how many people have ever done any metal spinning ever? All right, we got a couple folks, that's great. So this will be basic, but if you guys want to chime in on other more involved and advanced questions, and I was talking with Neil about, as I was prepping things, I was like, oh, I could do this thing, and then this other thing, and then this other thing, and I'm like, most people probably have no idea what this is, and are just, I have a lathe, and I want to do more cool things with my lathe, so let's kind of try that out. So the great thing about metal spinning is that you can do it on your wood turning lathe to an extent. You're not going to do like giant things. But the configuration of thrust bearings and stuff like that all works really well. I have an old Woodfast that I actually got from John Jordan before he passed away more than 25 years ago, and I've been doing all my wood turning and metal spinning on that lathe for more than 25 years. Now I'm not a production spinner or turner. I don't do it like every day. I do it along with a lot of other kind of things. But whatever lathe you have can work at whatever sort of size. So the big difference is that nearly everything in wood turning is subtractive, where you like start with a thing and then you carve it down to another thing. Metal spinning is very different in that it's a forming process. So you're going to start with like a flat sheet of something, and then you're going to push it around and form it into things. So you're not starting with like a giant block of metal and like carving it away into a shape as you would with like a wood block. So that's the big difference. The other thing that really keeps a lot of people, particularly wood turners that already have a lathe, from getting into it is like the tool rest here. So this is a different tool rest, as you probably would have noticed from like various tool rests that you have typically for like a wood turning lathe. Now, Neil was telling me about a tool that some wood turners might already have that could work for this, which is Trent Bosch's
stabilizer.
Stabilizer.
It's the rest for the stabilizer.
So the rest is similar to a segment of this that has holes drilled in it. So if you have that, or you're looking for an excuse to get that tool, that would also double as the tool rest for metal spinning. And the reason that you have this and these pins that move around is we're going to talk about the leverage of the tool against them too. Yes, Gary?
Can you hold that up so we can see the other side of it?
Of the metal spinning tool rest? I have one that's not in there.
Okay.
So I made this smaller one. So it's got holes along the top, and it can be sort of thicker. You don't need the sort of the narrow point to like glide the tool along and things like that. So so I have these, and this is the main hurdle for people. You can often find the spinning tools or even make it yourself, but it's usually the tool rest that holds everybody up. The other thing, yeah?
Could you make that out of a piece of wood and just drill holes in it?
I think you could. It depends on the size and like how big you want to go and what metals you want to work with. So the leverage can be significant. And so that would wear down on those holes. But I think to get started, you could certainly give it a try. And Neil and I were brainstorming stuff and just different questions. There's like, well, could you like spin with a broom handle and like push on the metal? And I did it, and it works. So it's you can get started very, very easily. You don't have to like, wait around to like find something that shows up on eBay or something. Yeah.
Is that something you had manufactured, or is that something you buy off the shelf?
So I made that smaller tool rest, and it's not that bad to make. It's just a block of square stock steel that you drill holes in and weld a post to. But I have a bunch of those. I've been teaching metal spinning at Aramont every summer for the past 3 summers, so they were living at Aramont. I brought those all back, and I'm tooling up now to, it's going to be a co-taught with another guy, Nathan Ward, out of the Chicago area, where we're going to be in the main John Jordan Wood Turning Center at Aramont and do wood and metal together. So connecting the wood components with the metal components and everything. But that'll be in the last week of July in 2027. So we're tooling up to do that stuff. So a couple other things to get started. One thing that'll be really different from that first demo that I did is I have gotten the pewter bug. I am all about pewter. It's not the only metal that I work with, but I think particularly knowing wood turning and metal spinning, this would be the place to start. So if you haven't done any work with any metal and you're like, wow, I don't know, fire and wood, maybe not a great combo, I don't know. But let me just pass around this book and you could take a picture of the cover or something like that. But the reason I'm recommending pewter is that it has some very unique properties that would work really, really great. It has a very low melting temperature. You can't anneal it, which is heating it up to a certain degree with a torch to soften the metal. You cannot heat pewter, which is a tin-based alloy, because it has really, really low melting points. So no fire. And should I pause for the train? I'm like well-trained on the train thing. And you can also like solder it with, you use solder that you use for plumbing or electrical. So you can use like a little soldering iron. You don't have to get into like open flames or torches or anything like that. And there's lots of other, if you start thinking about wood turning applications and things like that, there's lots of other applications for pewter with wood. I've talked with other folks about demos where you turn a little groove and melt the pewter into it and turn it back. But it's a really, really soft metal. It's predominantly tin, and you can shape it, and you'll see I'll trim it with like wood turning tools and everything like that. But it's just a really great metal for spinning, very, very easy, even easier than aluminum or anything like that. So,
availability?
Yeah, very easy. I get all of the sheets and everything else from a supplier called Contenti. So you can just buy either like an ingot for melting and casting, or sheets to cut into discs and things like that. So very, very accessible. So couple other things generally with spinning is you want to lubricate the metal. So as you're pushing on it and it's spinning, you don't build up friction and everything. So I tend to have a different shirt that might get, I use wax as a lubricant. So you might get some little grease or wax splatters on things. So I have like a separate sort of spinning attire. When I was at Aramont recently, I got an Aramont jacket to match my Golden Triangle Woodturners jacket, so I could be like color coordinated. But I just like to keep all of the splatter off of that. So let me just suit up. And another thing, since many of us have the like tool collecting bug, if you're looking for a good excuse, does anyone have like a really nice center finder? Ooh, all right, so don't drop this because it's really nice. But I have like the cheaper little plastic center finder and things like that for just finding the center of blanks. But with, if you're laying out like discs of metal and everything else, this is a really amazing precision tool. You mark it several times to find the center and everything. But I love this thing. I finally splurged and got myself one, so I just want to pass that around to lure you guys to the dark side of metalworking. You do want to have like a nice scribe, which is just like a pointy piece of metal to scribe your lines onto metal and everything like that. So, to get started with pewter, so essentially with spinning, what you're doing is you're going to clamp a disc of metal between. Now, I didn't make up the vocabulary for this, and I'm going to apologize in advance, but they call this a chuck. I'm sorry. I know when I say a chuck, you're not gonna think of like this solid wood thing. I know, I'm sorry, it's just what, it's in all the books for hundreds of years, it's just what they call it, so we're stuck with it. So this form holds the metal there, and then you have a follower block that I put in a live center in the back, and that'll clamp the metal in place so that while it's spinning, I can sort of push it down. You do not need to conform your metal to this chuck or form. So in production situations, they make these so that they can make the same thing over and over. So yes, if you wanted to make like a whole bunch of bells of exactly the same size, you could turn your form and you could lay the metal down to it and do exactly that same shape over and over and over. Most of us probably are not in that situation, or you're going to be making 5 of something or 10 of something or something. So I tend to have most of my spinning chucks that I use tend to be just a very narrow little taper that then I can push the metal around and do whatever shape I want there. And we can, we'll do the bell that we were talking about, the holidays and ornaments and things. We'll do that, and then I'll show you other things if you're interested on just how you can push the metal all around. So there's that, and you need it to be tapered so that if the metal does go all the way down to this form, that you can get it back off. Because so if you have, you guys laugh now, but if you have like a little relief in there and you spin it down on there, it will lock onto there and it is on there. Now that could be, you could do that on purpose, where you could have a turned form and you want to lock the metal on as a lid or a foot or something like that, and you could do it on purpose and it could be really interesting. The other part is the follower block, and I tend to have incrementally sized follower blocks, so that the first thing that I'll do is I'll lock the metal onto the end of this chuck so that it's not going to slip off, and it'll have a little foot, and then you can do anything you want from there. So that's kind of the basic process. And the height of the tool rest is not as critical as it is in wood turning. So there's a lot of like moving all the way around in like more of 3 dimensions that I tend to like set my tool rest when I'm doing turning at the exact size for, I have like little stops here for the size of the tool that I'm using, so I hit dead center and all that other good stuff. So this is a little bit more sort of like free-formy, loosey-goosey, so that maybe is good, maybe that's disturbing, I don't know. And so we just have that, and a couple other things. So depending, if you're doing this a lot and you're doing bigger and bigger forms, as the metal heats up, the wax will come off. And in my regular sort of spinning jumpsuit I have at home, I have like a black stripe of sort of wax there. In spinning shops, they tend to use other things that stick onto the warmer metal better. So they'll use like axle grease and all sorts of other things that don't come off the metal as much, but I just find is a lot grimier. And then since I use my lathe for both wood and metal, I don't want to be cleaning all this like axle grease off of it. So yeah.
So does that metal have wax on it?
This doesn't yet. I'm
Okay.
going to put some on there, but just kind of getting set up with all the things. And then as far as other gear, since I don't like cleaning wax and stuff out of like whatever hair I have, I do like the little like welder's cap to, kind of keep things out of there. And then I'm also, I learned about internet trolls. With some of my spinning videos where I am wearing these gloves. So these gloves are TIG welding gloves, which is a particular type of welding that we don't have to get into. But the reason that I like them is that they're really thin, and so I find that you can, the main risk for injury and everything is rubbing against the edge of the spinning disc, right? And so just in case you slip or something, I do like having gloves while I'm spinning and working on a lathe. And oh my gosh, some of the worst online back and forths I've ever gotten into was how I am insane and I am endangering people's lives, and you should never wear gloves while working on a lathe. So I feel that everyone is entitled to their own viewpoints and opinions on things. And yes, there are certain risks to it, but I have my lathe set up to where the belt is going to slip if I really get sort of hung up on something. And I'm not doing like ginormous spinnings that I'm working at sort of like a speed and force and everything that it's going to like, break a finger or something like that. So it's up to you. You make your own decisions on what you feel best. I just feel the risk-benefit analysis on having like the nice, thin, well-fitting TIG welding gloves is worth it, and it sort of contains the spinning grime as well. So, man. Just, I know it's a thing. I'm just full disclaimer there. So, but anyway, these TIG welding gloves are really great because they're nice and thin. I'm not a large human, so sometimes it's harder to find gloves that fit very tightly on my hands and everything like that. So there's those things. And then, of course, you know, face shield, right? That's just for everything, right? Okay, so have that all set up, and the first thing that I'm going to do is center that blank. I'm going to skip that suit up part of it and just go here, and you guys can still hear me okay, even though it's very echoey for me in here, right? Okay, so you can trim the metal so you don't need to center it up precisely. So you just want to have this clamped well enough in here, and I usually like sort of give it a test and see how far out it is. This can be one of the most challenging things for beginners, is getting this centered. Now, you can sort of center it with a tool, or you can just do it by eye and getting close enough. So you don't have to be as precisely centered as you would with turning or anything. So we're off there. You can see that it's off a little, and you can basically just take any sort of like hardwood, scrap wood or something, and you press against the metal blank, and here's the tricky part, where you have to loosen the tailstock enough that you can push the metal to center, and then tighten it back. See that? I didn't do it too fast, do it too well. Makes sense? Everyone's on board? You're all okay? Okay, so that,
You're the one that would have changed.
I know, that's gonna be
it flies all over. Now, if this blank, before you lock it onto this form, yes, the blank can fly out of here. So I do tend to work over here. But again, most likely if it is going to slip, it tends to go down or away from you anyway. So I'm not as worried as maybe some other folks in the splash zone might be. But you have that centered well enough, and then I use my apparently endangered Johnson paste wax that they're not manufacturing anymore, and just apply like a little bit of wax onto there. And then as far as the tool, I do probably, ooh, there we go. Okay, so I probably do 95% of my spinning with this one tool, where it has sort of a flat side for smoothing out the metal. It has some ridges along the side if you need to get into some tighter areas, and then it has a little bit of a belly kind of, they call it a spoon tool, which again, I did not invent these terms. So you have that, and ooh, let me move that so the red is, nah, we're just going to go with it. So it is spinning. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put pressure. I'm going to use this tool post as a fulcrum. The tool's going to go into here, and I'm going to come past center, and I'm going to lever the metal down onto the form. So it's right here. I come in, and you're just pushing enough, so I'm pushing this way, away from it, and then the fulcrum point of this tool rest pin is pushing the force against the metal this way. And you can contact the metal wherever you like. It's not as critically important as it is in wood turning where you're actually contacting the metal. So I tend to work, if you think of it as a clock face, looking at it this way, I tend to work between sort of 6 o'clock at the bottom and 9 o'clock on the side. Some people do a lot of spinning like right in line with the axis of rotation around 9 o'clock. Again, I'm not a large human, and so if I need extra leverage and everything, I tend to tuck the tool under my shoulder and like use my body a bit. Yes? It depends. I mean, it's sort of like what you're comfortable with. And it's very similar to wood turning, where if it's too slow, then you get that kind of like, you're just going with the rotation, not really moving the things around. But if it's going, it's not any problem if it's going too fast. you're just going to build up a little bit extra friction. But again, that's not going to be as much of a problem with pewter. So in the 1,000, maybe 1,000 realm, yeah.
Where did you get the tool?
So this, I got like at a flea market, honestly. But I have been collaborating with a blacksmithing friend of mine that essentially took molds off of this tool. And so I have the basic spoon tool, although you can work with a nice dense hardwood, and it'll do great on pewter if you just want to start with pewter. But I do have more of just these tool blanks that you could set into whatever handle you want. So, but yeah, the actual spinning tools and spoon tools like this come up on auctions and eBay a lot more than the tool posts, because the tool posts depend on the size of the lathe and all that stuff. So, okay, so we're using that fulcrum point, we're pivoting, and all I'm doing at this point is just locking my tool rest down, just locking it onto the end of that form. So hopefully you can see that there's just like a little step there, and I'm going to change to a larger follower block, and I just need enough clearance so I can get the tool in there to do other stuff. So I'm just going to set it down here, and you can see it sort of like deflect a little bit. Maybe from above you can see that deflection a little bit. There we go. So you can see it sort of like doesn't want to go down as much more than this. So that's enough. So then what I'll do, it's going to stay centered on there enough that I got that foot, and then I'm just going to switch out the follower block to one that's larger. And this is another big mistake that people make in the beginning, is they don't switch out their follower blocks. They keep spinning, and then the follower block becomes a punch and punches a hole in the bottom of your metal. So if I kept going, it would, if you can see here, there's like a little impression, and even in the thing that I passed around, there's like a little impression from the undersized follower block, and then you don't switch out, and then you're just going to like end up punching a hole in it. So that should be good enough. All right. Now we're at the point where you could just pretty much, you're done, you're supporting with the oversized follower block, and now you can do sort of whatever you want to do. And I just, either you can adjust the tool rest for things, or you can like move the pins around, whatever you need to do. And the big difference between a lot of like the videos that you'll see online that are really cool and amazing and stuff is that those are production spinners that are doing it in a particular way to make things as fast as possible, to make them as cheap as possible. And we're not interested in that. We're interested in working safely, creatively, responding to what's happening, having fun with it, and just not being rushed, and just sort of take your time. So you have that, and then from here, let me just crank that down a little bit. All right. And then from here, so as far as the force that's taking to move that metal, it's kind of like leaning into it a little bit. I'm not sweating. I'm talking while I'm doing it. And you can see I'm just working out on air. I'm not pushing against the form. And you can really just start developing whatever shape you want to develop. And one of the talents that you have from spinning, from wood turning, that's really going to be relevant here is that habit of looking through the rotating form to see the shape that you're developing, right? Like you're not, when I'm teaching this to, like, let's say my undergraduate metals jewelry students, they stare right at the center of the axis of rotation, and they can't see what's really happening. You have to look like above or below it and see the rotating form, and as it's changing, you can see what you're doing. So you're looking, because they're staring at the metal and they can't see the changes that they're making. So right here, you can see the change in the profile that you're doing. And then you just adjust where the pin is, and there's nothing, I mean, I'm sure in industrial situations, there's CNC machines and charts about where the pin should be and where the tool should be and like all this precise geometry and everything. don't worry about it. Just do what works for you, whatever you're comfortable doing. Some people when they're spinning just like to use their arms and sort of like row the boat kind of technique with just like this. Like I said, since I'm a smaller human, I tend to like tuck under the shoulder and do a lot of dancing with it and just use the leverage of my entire body so that it's comfortable and easy for me. So, or whatever combo works for you. Now the other thing that'll commonly happen, and you could sort of practice with this, is it's a bit like throwing pottery on a wheel. So how many people have ever like thrown pots on a wheel? Okay, so it's a little bit like that. The axis of rotation is horizontal instead of vertical, but you're forming the material, but also you can be thinning the wall thickness. So depending on how you're applying the tool, and this will happen with practice, but if you're putting too much force initially, you're going to actually, particularly with pewter, you're going to thin it out and then eventually tear it because, like, I think this blank of material is only like 1 millimeter thick. So you do have to really watch your wall thickness, and that can develop with both the forward strokes, and you notice that I'm also doing some forming and doing some force on the backstroke as well. So that's really a practice thing. Again, there's nothing sort of like carved in stone about, well, if you do it exactly this way, it'll all be fine. So, yeah. And I have extra blanks, like if anyone's feeling like really ambitious about like wanting to give it a try tonight, or, if you've done some spinning but you haven't done pewter, like, I'm really moving the metal around and I'm talking, I'm not out of breath, I'm not like, oh my God, this is so hard. Oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do it? And it will, depending how you're spinning it, you can stretch the metal out.
James?
Yes?
At this point, could you attack it from the other side still?
Yeah,
In other
sure.
words, if you wanted to create like a
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just do it. So 2 things related to that. So as far as the tool contacting the material, so yeah, it's all up for grabs, particularly with pewter. Now if this was aluminum, I would need to like take it off, anneal it. It depends on your, like, in a production situation, you wouldn't have to anneal it. But with like, I'm trying this, I'm trying that, you back and forth, back and forth. Every time the tool is rubbing against the metal on any metal that will work harden. So that's like aluminum, brass, bronze, copper, silver, all of those will harden. Pewter, as a predominantly tin-based alloy, will not harden. I've heard the term work soften. I don't know if I believe that. I think it's just people are used to the metal hardening, and since it doesn't, it just keeps going. But you can really like get in and sort of pinch it around and do all sorts of stuff. So one thing that you could do that I just wanted to show is sort of like neck it in. So since I have that tapered wooden form, if I go in, and I don't know what this bell is going to end up looking like, but we're just going to Frankenstein it and do crazy things. But so I'm just putting force actually up, going under the form, and I'm necking it in that way, like right here. Does that make sense? And that's, instead of going full back and forth and doing those passes to sort of decrease the whole overall dimensions of the form, I'm just picking one spot and sort of like, all right, let's just neck it in. Now you do risk the danger of like really thinning it there. So I guarantee if we cut this in half, it's thinner where I just did that. And then what you just said about like coming at it from this side and going back to the tailstock, let's do that. You do want to get a little, just a little wax on in there. It's not as essential with pewter. And again, even with pewter, you do want to watch the edge. It is a cut piece of metal. And then you could just take the pin and you can go back the other way. Whee! All right, it's going to turn into more of a UFO than a bell, but you know. And then, so really that's what I love about pewter is you can change your mind, you can improvise with it. It really can just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to play with it and just see what happens. It is a bit more expensive than aluminum, but it's certainly nowhere near like sterling silver or anything like that. It's probably like wiggling and getting out of center because I've been like horsing around with it and doing bad things and thinning stuff out, and it's going to tear somewhere. But yeah, you can, like I said, it's going to tear somewhere. But you can sort of bring that back up into some UFO-like sombrero thing that's happening. I don't know what the shape is becoming,
What
but
gauge metal is that?
it started as 1 millimeter. They tend to sell the pewter in metric increments. So I often spin either 1 millimeter or 1.6 millimeter so that I can just sort of improvise and mess around with it and thin it out and not tear through it and get all worried about it. So
With clay, when you thin it down, you can sometimes compress down, thicken it back up again. Can you counterbalance that and where you thicken it also?
some areas will thicken, so as you're doing passes along the whole thing, the lip will tend to thicken as you're moving all that material. It's tough to take that thick lip and like scooch it back down into the rest of the material. Like once you've thinned out an area, it generally is going to stay thin, and you're going to keep, because it's a weak point, so as you put force on it, then it's going to wrinkle back in on itself or tear or something like that. So we're just doing crazy things here. But you can sort of even it back out. This is like the sombrero bell. I don't know what's happening. But you can saw that, sort of pushing it back over, and you can change your mind. You can go back again. Let's just keep peeling it back. I've done this a bunch with some pieces. It's not as much of a bell, but it becomes, so if you start thinking about the design of the piece, almost upside down.
What are the rolls of lip?
So yeah, that's a whole thing. I was debating about getting into rolling a lip tonight or not, and that requires 2 other tools that are either really tricky to make or difficult to find and things like that. So I don't do that as much. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just, another common thing to do is called like wiring the lip, where they will like solder or weld on a wire all the way around. So you could do that. I did want to just, before I like tear this thing all apart, I did want to just show trimming. So, okay, so you're moving it, the metal is moved. We now have this like weird UFO cup thing, I don't know. But it'll naturally, because it's a plastic material, stretch out and it's gotten off center. So let's say for some reason we want it to be exactly concentric. And I really just wanted to show you trimming. So if I was going to do a lot of them, I would switch this out, go back to the wood turning tool rest, and use that. But just to show you how easy it is, so this is just like one of my standard scrapers that I use all the time. And again, you want to sort of like adjust where you're cutting, but it's not as critical with pewter. So it'll sort of chatter a little bit, but the shavings that come off of it, because pewter is so soft, it's not going to be that sharp. So it's going to be very, very fine. So you can use that. I also got this used, and it's basically just like a giant machining lathe tool clamped into a pipe. But I mean, I use it all the time, and it works great, and you can just regrind it and everything else. But you can also get into sort of trimming that way. And then, if you needed to cut off like more material, you can certainly get in there. Come on, there we go. Trim that off. And again, every cut area is, can be a little sharp, and it's spinning metal and everything like that. For polishing, let me just throw another thing on there just because I've like whittled this down to like a miniature flower pot or something. I don't know what this is. So let me.
Is it hot?
Oh, no. So I would sort of clean or file this lip up a little bit because it's just not sort of soft and comfy, but it could be like, I don't know, little like flower potty thing, but we'll pass that around. I do want to do another one just to,
Can you sand the edge?
yeah, absolutely, you could sand it down. Now, if you, I should say with pewter, if you do have other metals in your shop, you do need to have a different set of tools just for pewter. So because pewter is such low temperature, most alloys melting below 500 degrees, it can act as a solder or a contaminant to other higher temperature metals. So let's say you were spinning pewter and copper, and then you like have all this stuff everywhere, and then you go to anneal your copper, and you have some like pewter dust all over your copper. When you heat up the copper to anneal it, the pewter is going to spread across it like solder, which could be a really cool effect, but if that's not what you wanted, that can be a problem. So I do, since I work with a variety of different metals in my own studio, I do, when I get into pewter land, it's like, here's my separate toolbox with just my pewter things, and clean up all this stuff before I get into any other metals. So let's just repeat that process. If I have, do I have like 5 or 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
More than that.
Just, you gotta like, tell me when to bring the train into the station here. So we'll just do it again, and I just wanted to show you, has anyone worked with Simichrome polish for any reason? Ah, cool, great. Do you use it on spinnings or just other stuff? Or? Cool, right. So that's just a general purpose polish that I found I really like. So we'll just to re-emphasize the basics.
Is your chuck flat on the end, or does it have a divot? So that your end piece goes in?
It does have a little bit of a divot, but that might have happened over time. It didn't start that way. All right, so we'll center again. So again, I'm ready. I don't have this clamped down. This is ready to sort of be loose. And it helps to be a little bit more upright against it so it doesn't roll up it. So it centers up enough. I did that really quick. It always happens like really quickly, but you have that clamp down. And again, you can get away without lubricating pewter, but just as general habit, I like just a little bit of paste wax on there. And then I'm just going to foot it against the chuck again.
Do you put the wax on both sides or just on the one side?
I just put it on the one side for right now because I'm planning to only have the tool touch the outside. But we got into the like, hey, can you do this? Hey, why not? Let's try. You know, so we just got into that. Depending on what you're doing, let me just get that. So that's set there. That's enough. I don't want to do too much. Put that off so it doesn't fall. Get this guy. And another thing that I use all the time that I didn't bring because I had to stop myself from just piling all the tools in was does anyone have like a live center drill chuck for the tailstock? Oh my God, that is the coolest thing ever. So it's just like a 3-job drill chuck, but it also has a live center bearing in it. And so as far as setting up like weird specialized tooling to like hold this weird stuff or like flip a spinning around the other way and get down into that spinning and work over here, and that, once I realized that thing existed and I could use that to create all these other kinds of follower blocks things, that has been really amazing. So just listing off the tools for Santa to bring you, right? Okay, so that's locked on. And then I can do whatever it is that I want to do. And we'll spin an actual bell more. So again, I have the tool rest there. I'm working the leverage of that post. I'm pushing this way towards the tailstock. The pin is putting the force back the other direction, so it's a lot of just leverage. And again, I'm out there on air. Like everyone thinks like, ooh, spinning on air is some crazy magical advanced skill. 95% of the spinning you're doing is out on air anyway. And sure, you can lay this all the way down to this chuck and have, a production situation, but you don't need to. You can just spin, just like throwing a pot on a wheel, you can sort of just intuitively decide whatever shape it is that you like. I'm probably doing, and I also held myself back from doing my whole handout thing because I am a university teacher and I love handouts. And so I have a bunch of PDFs on my website as resources that you're welcome to download and print out for yourself and everything else. So having dinner with my wife and I was like, maybe I should print handouts. She's like, just stop. Just go and just do the thing. And if they want the handouts, if you go to the website or if there's any supplemental information, you're super into this, I can send you, I've got this many spinning books that I didn't bring. So there's tons of resources if you really do want to get into it or anything. But they have some really great sort of force diagrams that show this feathering motion of start with more force and then sort of feather it off, and then on the backstroke increase your force. Just some really great kind of visualization of what's going on there. Yeah. And sometimes things will slip, you'll need to tighten it down and stuff like that. But I think the bottom's going to tear out, so that's great. I can show you what happens there. Okay, so when this happens to you, don't feel bad. So too much force initially or laying it down on that. So this is what's going to happen many times when you spin. So don't worry. Look, I took one for the team. This will happen all the time. Now, if you really want to get into it, you could re-weld pewter on the bottom and things like that. So
That's where you attach the handle, right?
this is where you attach the handle. So look, it's a bell, ready to go. There you go.
Does this profile of the tip of the chuck have any impact on how likely you are to tear through?
Repeat that one more time.
Okay, the chuck, you've got a flat surface, and then you get the taper, just,
Oh, this corner.
yeah, that corner.
Yes, particularly with pewter, if this corner, the sharper this corner is, so what I did basically is as I was burnishing it down against this corner, I pushed too hard because I'm all excited, you guys are all watching me, and then I thinned out the material too much for then the subsequent forming. So it because pewter is so soft, this edge of the form worked through and thinned the metal right there.
Does spherical shape work better, or?
I was gonna do that as the second part of the demo. I was gonna do this round bottoms chuck and everything. Yes, you're not gonna have the tear out issue, but the problem that can happen is it can shift much more easily. And I figured since most people here tonight probably hadn't done this at all, I was gonna not get into sort of intermediate and advanced level stuff. So let me just throw one other on there real quick because I want to show you Simichrome polish. Ooh, I'll just throw this on and polish this up more. We'll just do that for the sake of time because I could do this all night. So you saw this. This is basically sort of burnished and fine. With Simichrome, so this is that product. It's just like a general metal polish. I don't know what it's really supposed to be used for, but I just found it as a really great it's kind of buff on, buff off finish for general purpose metal. I don't love sanding. I'm not a big fan. I don't want to go through 120, 220, 320, 420, all that sanding and polishing and all that other kind of business. And particularly with pewter that is a softer metal, it's never going to hold a high polish. You need harder metals to hold high polishes over a long period of time. And particularly if this is going to be touched and everything else. So you want to watch because again, it is sort of like a very liquidy paste. So if you put too much on there, it can spin off. You can see a little bit all over. But again, so it's spinning towards you. So for polishing this, you can go up. You don't want to go. You want to go under the metal. Let me just tighten that down a little bit. And you just sort of buff on and buff back off. Find a clean part on my polishing rag here. Yeah, exactly, right? Do we still get that popular reference? So it's very easy to apply. It's like a quick, easy shine. And then, I don't think it's that. It warms a little bit, so we'll pass that around again. It's warmish, it's not, going to be any. So, yes.
You have all different kinds of chucks. Do you make all different kinds? Do you have just one or two, or what?
Honestly, I do probably 80 to 90% of my forms. So a lot of the forms that I'm doing are these smaller little like tabletop vessels that I'll make a lid for, and maybe it'll be a vessel that holds a piece of jewelry hanging down inside of it or something like that. So these become containers for jewelry or something. So most of them are, I would say, 4 to 5 inch blanks. This here is a 3-inch blank. And I would say I do 80, 90% of my spinning on a chuck like this, or even this chuck. Just because I can do all those shapes and whatever else around this. If I needed to do a whole bunch of the same thing, then I have other chucks that would sort of conform to that. And then you see all the cool things online and stuff with all these like multi-part breakdown chucks. I know that Neil's made at least one of those, right? 2 of those. So that's the kinds where it has a return on it, has all these puzzle pieces, and you do the spinning, and then you pull all the pieces out, and that every once in a while that'll pop up sort of semi-viral online and be like, oh wow, what's that crazy thing?
You mentioned your website. What is it?
Oh, jamesthurman.com. www.jamesthurman.com. Yeah.
Is that chuck mounted in a real chuck?
I don't like to do that because of it. The force, there is a fair amount of force, and just then putting the forces on the jaws of the chucks and things like that, I don't like. It's a little. If you're really looking closely, and you guys all have like really good wood turner eyes, so it's running a bit out because I didn't return it as it came to the new lathe. So this is on one adapter, and then this adapter threads onto it to another adapter to this lathe. So running this form or chuck off of 2 adapters, you're going to start having some run out of, you can visibly see that, right?
So that's threaded.
So this has an internal thread, but you can see the run out on this, right? So I'm not sure if I can get it off. Yeah, so here we go. So then this is set up this way, and this is just like a hard maple, but then so I tend to use all of that same threading. We'll drill that out, and that's threaded. And then this isn't going to come apart right now, but so then that has threading that adapts to that one, and this adapter fits to this lathe and everything.
So you could thread straight onto the headstock.
You could absolutely do that, sure. You don't need any adapters, and you're not going to have that run out and everything like that. So, sure, yeah.
Where do you source your material?
Which material? The pewter?
Yeah.
So Contendi, Contenti. You can get pewter sheets, you can get casting ingots, all of those kind of things. So they don't teach pewter in school because it's such a contaminant. So if you think, like I've got 100 metal students running around the UNT studios, and then some of them are working with silver, some of them are working with copper, some of them working with pewter, and then they're not the cleanest people. So then contamination all over the place and things like that. So I didn't learn anything about pewter through any of my undergraduate or graduate education. I just came to it later. That's why I recommended that book. I reached out to, that's a wonderful thing about the small communities we have. You can just reach out to people, be like, hey, you did this book on pewter and you're amazing. And they're like, thanks, here's the book, enjoy, go for it. But I learned everything I know about pewter from that book. And then, of course, any other experiments as far as like casting inlay, if you wanted to do that and things like that, I'm happy to field any and all of those kinds of questions and things. So
if your students aren't using pewter, what are they using?
So they tend to, I've started to introduce pewter into the curriculum because you guys might not keep an eye on the price of like silver and gold, but my students sure do. And so recently silver crested over 50 an ounce, which I think is insane. And so they're looking for all these alternatives. The great thing with pewter is since it's predominantly tin, it's non-reactive, it's naturally food safe, there's no lead in it, all these other kind of great things where, you know, I don't want to say never, but it is unlikely I'm going to have a student that wants to make silver hollowware. But I have students that want to make vessels. And so even copper is getting expensive for them. And so being able to make a like silver toned vessel is really exciting. So we teach metal spinning in our curriculum. I'm easing pewter into the curriculum, but typically they work with like brass, copper, and silver.
So pewter's food safe. If
Yeah.
we made a bowl, you
Yeah.
could use that as a,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's predominantly tin. It does, depending on the alloy, it has a little bit of some things in there. So like some copper, some antimony, depending on the alloy. I would feel comfortable drinking out of it. I wouldn't store like an acidic tomato sauce in it. It's just gonna cause reactions and it's gonna start oxidizing and things like that. So, but I mean, as far as like drinking, you wanna make like little like pewter shot glasses as gifts or something like that, I would feel, 110% comfortable with all that.
You mentioned aluminum multiple times earlier.
Yeah.
Are you guys using aluminum at all?
It is also a contaminant because it's a significantly lower temperature than copper. When I teach spinning to students like in the curriculum, I have them start with aluminum because it's cheaper than pewter and it's a little bit harder so they don't make mistakes as quickly. So it slows them down a little bit. I decided to just get on the pewter evangelical wagon with you guys because you don't need any fire. So you're not annealing it. You can solder it with a soldering iron. You don't have to like, oh, I don't want to have a torch. I don't want to have fire in my shop, like all those other kind of problems. But the next thing, like to learn, like you could get into aluminum if you do have a torch and things like that, and you can anneal it. Aluminum is better to learn on because it takes a little bit more force and you go a little slower and the mistakes you make don't happen as quickly. So you saw like I footed this one and just went a little bit too hard because I'm like, ooh, I'm all excited, I'm demoing, and blew out the corner on it and tore out the bottom. So again, I don't mind because I'll just throw it in my scrap bin, melt it back down, cast it into things, and I'll use it. So yeah, ooh, tons of questions. You guys are great.
Do you save your,
Pewter
pieces
scrap?
that you've turned off, your scraps,
Mhm.
and remelt them?
Absolutely.
You're talking about ingots.
Yeah. So yeah, I just have bins of scrap, and the other stuff like copper and everything I'll take to the scrap yard. But with pewter, you can get, the one that I like is called the hot pot. But it's just an electrical little melting crucible. It has a little heating element in it. It's like less than $100. And so you can just throw those in there and then it's liquid again. You can use that for like casting into grooves into your turnings or,
plate, you pour disc.
Absolutely, sure, yeah. You could make molds out of like aluminum foil and cast into that. That works great. Like the low melting temperature, I just think is hilarious because it's like, you can pour metal into aluminum foil? Like, how does that, I mean, you can, like for welding and soldering it together, you can literally masking tape like pewter pieces together and then go in and like weld or solder it because it doesn't, it has a very, very low thermal conductivity. So at one point where you're soldering it, you could like hold the other side of it and it's not hot. It doesn't, there's all sorts of weird like anti-metal things that it does. It's like, it inverts anything you think you know about metal. Generally, pewter is usually the opposite, which I think is really exciting for like, having a career more than 25 years of being a metalsmith and thinking like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then like pewter comes along and you're like, huh? It's just, it throws me curveballs all the time in the most interesting way. Yeah.
Recommended aluminum alloy.
I think just like 1100 is great. It's like the most sort of pure aluminum alloy, so it naturally comes the softest. It tends to stay the softest while you're working with it. But there's other things depending on what you're doing. I mean, there's like a million different aluminum alloys, right? So I think just kind of going with that. Some, depending on where you order from, like McMaster Carr is more open about what alloy of aluminum you're ordering, but if you go and get like sheet aluminum from Home Depot, I don't think they know what alloy that is, and you're not going to be able to ask anybody that knows. So, yeah.
Does your website show where you order all this stuff from?
Ooh, if it doesn't, I can add the supplier list. I don't think I've listed that, but I will. I like that idea, because I have a whole resources page on there with the PDFs and all that stuff. But yeah, and if you're not finding something, really, just email me, and I'm happy. That's why I'm doing this. I'm excited about metal spinning. I'd love for other people to get into metal spinning. There's more wood turners that get into metal spinning than like metalsmiths and jewelers, because you guys have the lathe. Like metalsmiths and jewelers don't have lathes. They're like, well, I don't know, just for one thing, do I want to really get this whole other thing? So there's not, in the sort of my main world of metalsmithing and jewelry, there's like 2 other humans in North America that are individual metal spinners that I know. Like, one is also in Denton, like Harlan Butt does all his spinnings for his enameled vessels, and then there's one other woman, Lynn Hall, in the Pacific Northwest. And those are, like, as far as individual artist metal spinners, now there's tons of commercial shops, but as far as like an individual, those are the only people I know. I mean, I hope there's more, because I'm feeling like an endangered unicorn, but, and that's another reason why I just want to like spread the glories of metal spinning so that like more people do it, because it's really fun and cool and expands things. I mean, you could very easily add in like little spun pewter lids into some of the turnings. Totally easy to just jump right into, so. I could go on all night, but you better stop me.
Any more questions for James?
One more.
Am I wrong to say that aluminum has to be coated for it to be food safe?
Yes, you are correct in that. I mean, yes, that's where I stand with it. There's lots of different debates about chemical interactions with the body and aluminum and like all kinds of things like that. And I haven't seen anything that I feel comfortable saying, oh, sure, yeah, that's totally food safe. Generally, what they do is they will seal aluminum like through a clear anodizing process or something like that to make sure there's no reaction. So, but yeah, I mean, I totally feel comfortable on the pewter side of things.
I have a set of 3 dishes.
Yeah, great. But it's interesting, there is a lot more prejudice against pewter in the Americas than in Europe and Great Britain, because we were, in the imperial days, we were exported the lead-bearing pewter alloys, and they kept the lead-free stuff in Great Britain. So, yeah.
Approximately how much of those small discs that you've been turning tonight cost?
So I'd say the 3-inch disc, now you're going to have waste because you're not going to use the corners for anything, so that is in the $3 to $4 range. So, I mean, it does add up. Like, you're learning quick. It's going to be cheaper to learn on aluminum. It does add up. But, again, I'm not as concerned because I have a little hot pot and I'll melt it back down and use it for other stuff. So.
Okay, so if we use pewter and we ruin a bunch, you'd be happy to take the scraps, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, don't throw it out, please. Yeah, I will definitely use it. Happy to.
Okay, well, thank you very much, James. It was great.
Sure. Thank you, guys.